ule mwingine akakuwa deputy. Saa hii mimi ndio nimekaribia. Sasa wakiniunga mkono iko makosa? Sasa iko haja gani ya kusungukana tena? Simu nisaidie tu nifike haraka hivi, alafu maneno mambo ndio hiyo. Tunakubaliana jameni? Na waomba jameni kwa unyenyekevu mniombee hawa ndugu zangu. Ni ndugu zangu wakubwa, lakini unajua kwa heshima si ni kuomba. Biblia inasema Mathayo 7 mstari ya 7. Ukiomba unapewa.
All right, ukiomba unapewa. That's what the Deputy President has to say. And a quick reintroduction of the panel that I have this morning. We are now joined by Vincent Kimosop, who is a political analyst. Earlier on, we already had Godfrey Otsotsi, Honorable Godfrey Otsotsi, who's a nominated member of parliament, and Brian Mutie, who's a governance expert. So, Vincent, let me give you the privilege to start now that you're the one who has come. And the Deputy President, of course, very savvy with his words, has a way of, using humor. And, if you look at it at face value, it sounds okay. I mean, there's nothing wrong. But of course, the underhand that we may not be hearing is what he also made again, I think it was still in Kakamega, when he brought about the issue of the government of unity, where we had the Prime Minister, Raila Odinga, and Musalia Mudavadi, and he said that he was left out. So there could be that playing. But let's start with the opening remarks.
I want to say, as in, thanks for having me. Let me start that. And I would want to say that when you listen to the Deputy President, you actually get you get 3 dimensions about just what he said. Number one is that, hey, there are people whom I helped in the past, they owe me something. So here, in his speech, he spoke about the former Prime Minister, he spoke about the former Deputy Prime Minister, that is Musalia Mudavadi, and of course, indirectly also implying the current president, that I will actually move from Western Kenya, go to Nyanza, and then on my way to the mountain, as I ask people to, hey, honor your debt when my time comes. So I think that is one thing that you get. The other thing is also the element of doing politics in a way that you can actually communicate great things and things of monumental proportion directly in a way that the people can understand with a lot of humor. And then finally is also pointing out that when it comes to the succession of 2022, you can already see the people he will who he has to contend with. So the former Deputy Prime Minister, that is Musalia Mudavadi, is actually part of the succession debate. So you can see the narrowing of the people who will be in focus as we move close to 2022. So that's how I see and summarize the speech by the Deputy President. And also talk about sound bites in politics. You see, as in after his speech, we all laughed. That is, so the people who are interested in running for political positions need to polish their language in ways that you can say a lot of things with a lot of ease and with a lot of, in a way that you leave the people remembering him. I can tell you, if you go back to the same context, there are people who would still be discussing the same thing, saying, hey, huyu jamaa anajua kuongea sana. That is what it takes.
And that's also a quality that the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga has. He's able to put words together in a very humorous way, but making very heavy statements. Let me come to you, Honorable Sotsi, on your takeout from that particular speech and what the Deputy President was inferring to.
Several things. One, for me, I think the politics of political debt is a backward kind of politics. Because if you say so-and-so owes me, you may find that even that person you are saying owes you, he is also claiming that
you owe him.
You owe him. If we talk about political debts in this country, the first debt that comes in mind is Jaramogi versus Jomo Kenyatta. When Jaramogi said, I'm not taking over until
Kenyatta is released.
That's the first one. We have another second major political debt, Raila Odinga Kibaki, when Raila said Kibaki Tosha. But we are not talking about that. Even in Western, where Ruto was addressing, I can tell you for sure that that statement is going to do a lot of damage to Ruto's political movement in Western than good. Why? Because when you go to the Luyas and you are telling them that you need to support me, and those Luyas remember that they held Moi's leadership for 24 years, starting with Musalia Mudavadi's father, who plucked Moi from a classroom and made him a politician. And the community, through Mudavadi Senior, through Elijah Mwangale, Burundi Nabwera, and now Musalia Mudavadi, they held Moi against the resistance from Central Kenya and Nyanza for 24 years. And now, even before that community tests power, you are coming to tell them that you want them to support you. That is unacceptable. And one other thing that people don't know, that Ruto was not invited in that event. That event was for a member of parliament on ANC who was doing his homecoming.
But he's the deputy president. He can go with us whoever he wishes.
No, the host said very clearly that he had not invited Ruto to come. The chief guest of that function was Honorable Musalia Mudavadi. Then all of a sudden, because of machinations of people like Khalware and the others, Deputy President appeared. Just to come and spite Musalia Mudavadi and Wetangula. I think that's unacceptable, and Ruto will go far if he stops this politics of debt.
Okay. Brian Mutie, your thoughts on that and the fact that politics of debt seems to be something that Kenyans understand in terms of when the politicians stand. However, MOUs have never been honored or have rarely been honored in this country. So really, it is a redundant conversation.
I don't think it's a redundant conversation because we derive our political culture from our African culture or Kenyan culture. So African culture demands that you give, I give, or you give, I give back in kind. And therefore, this one, you cannot separate these two, because once you do something good to someone, he expects you to also retaliate in the same way. I just want to say that in the man or in the character of one William Ruto, my brother, Honorable Tosi, is a little bit hard on him, owing to the fact that he's actually, as he has put, amekaribia pale. And if you were to put yourself, Bwana Ososi, in DP's shoes, when the goal is just some few meters away and there is no goalkeeper, of course, you are likely to also behave the same. And I want to say that initially you have said that he has actually embarked on early campaigns, other than actually embarking on supporting the president on actually moving the Big Four agenda forward. And I want to say that Kenya, we have a peculiar culture of politics. And by the time we are going to neutralize this kind of culture, I think it'll take years. But for now, we have to live with it. The DP has been making inroads in central Kenya, in Ukambani, in Western, and I think he has visited Western more times than another region in this country because of the voter-rich kind of situation that we all know about Western culture, Western province. And therefore, we have to forgive him because the time calls for that. He has to cement his grip. He has to, position himself so strategically that he is going to win, to score the ultimate goal. Because this is his game. He has no other career. He's a politician. He's not like somebody who has another job somewhere else and he treats politics as his part-time job. No, this is his full-time job, and he is made of it. And but
having said that, Brian, allow me to interrupt a little bit there because. Having said that, if we're going to look at it from a perspective of politics of debt, where does that leave the electorate? That means it's literally just the big boys playing in a field where they reward each other. Where does that leave development? That means we're in a visionless society. Let me allow Mheshimiwa to speak.
That's why I said it's undemocratic for us to start talking about political debt. Because who will ask the other for the payment of his debt? Because each one of us owes the other something. Even for Ruto. Ruto has said that in Karibia. But we remember as lawyers and as a leader from the region, in 2002, when Mudavadi alikuwa anakaribia, anakaribia Moi succession, Ruto and a few other fellows within the system then who are powerful stopped Mudavadi from getting to power and supported Uhuru Kenyatta.
In fact,
So he is talking to the wrong people and the wrong message. And in fact, he clouded his message by talking about sugar issues, saying, oh, those CSS should not have been mentioned in the report, and that's why report did not go. He actually insulted the very voters that he was looking for votes from.
And if we were to go down that avenue, Vincent, of course, there is the question that would be raised. According to Musalia Mudavadi, if what he says is anything to go by, we do know that the president apparently and deputy president went to his house and promised him that they were going to support him for president at some point.
And that's how I pointed out in my initial perspective that this discussion of politics of debt will not go away, because you also realize that somebody like the former Deputy Prime Minister Musalia Mudavadi is also somebody who is owed. Remember, Musalia Mudavadi in 2002 he supported Uhuru Kenyatta. In 2007 he supported Raila Odinga. In 2017, he again supported Raila Odinga. The same thing applies to former Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka. He supported Kibaki, then went ahead and supported Raila Odinga twice. So you in our discussion, as far as our mobilization mic remains ethnic, you cannot rule out the issue and discussions around political debt in our politics, because we have not moved to issues. Just look at even the conversation that we are having. There are real issues that affect the people of Western Kenya, includes the issues of infrastructure, includes the issues of the dismal performance of the agricultural sector, specifically the sugar sector. But what are we discussing? What is the political issue that is, it is the personality, the community, and the debt. So it is until the day when we now move from those personalities to the issues, then issues like political debt will no longer be an issue, because you can hear his dimension about that if Ruto moves this direction, what happens? It is not good for his politics. Now, the same thing can be flipped on the other side, because even Musalia Mudavadi is owed. Kalonzo Musyoka is owed. I'm sure if we had somebody from Wiper, he would say, hey, Ata Sisi, we have stood with Raila Odinga. We need to. So I can tell you, the only person who is not affected, even the president, he is actually he is on record having said our Jubilee agenda is very clear. 10 years of my service, and then Uhuru, and then my deputy. So he has already gotten into the quagmire of political debt. Now, what has now changed is, I think, the handshake era has actually changed
and that
a lot
has probably
of our
left the president in between a rock and a hard place, because
I don't think so. I don't think
you
so.
don't think so?
Yes, I don't think so.
Do you think that has left the president in between a rock and a hard place with a handshake?
I think if there's anybody who is sleeping like a baby today, is one President Uhuru Kenyatta, yes, compared to how he used to, enjoy his sleep patterns before the handshake. And I want to say this because that kind of antidote, that handshake was antidote, a game changer for that matter, because it neutralized all the tensions, all the emotions, and the country went back now to a better mode where the president can now plan and execute whatever he has in his mind, in his manifesto, in his agenda. And that's why you can see now he's actually stamping his authority, he's behaving presidential, and he's actually taking this country now to the right direction, and everybody is actually applauding his moves. And I want to say this because when we say that, when you ask whether the president is actually between hard and rock, somehow, but just on a small scale, where he's actually, torn between how to balance the politics of the day and how to maintain his political friends without hurting, and at the same time, addressing the issue of corruption and spurring this country towards a development, pathway. And I want to say this because when you look at the statistics right now in terms of economic gains after the handshake, it is so huge that you would ask yourself, why were we fighting all along? Why didn't this handshake come earlier? And this is actually the hard question that we also
We
need
spoke
to ask.
about it in this program.
Of course.
We spoke about the handshake before it happened.
Absolutely.
And pointed out that what is it that will be required. And remember Mike saying, what is during the high heightened political period. We said, and I remember pointing out that what is required in this point is what we call a transcendent leadership. A leadership that rises above the praise of NASA and Jubilee and then brings out the good. So you notice that the handshake actually provided that opportunity, and that's why I said that what has changed, the handshake has changed the scenario because the handshake has given Uhuru Kenyatta a trajectory. And you can see the fight against corruption that is pursued, it was only possible in the current context because you could not be able to come out clearly and say, hey, our community, or I'm being targeted. It has come out as a cause that all Kenyans, even including those in the minority, actually supporting.
Exactly.
So
Okay.
if he moves on that trajectory, then the issues of debt, political debt, might actually take him to the pre-handshake face. So the actors, including the deputy president, therefore anyone who is running for 2022 needs to recalibrate in view of the handshake.
In view of that, you wanted to finish that on
Yeah, before he interjected me, I think I wanted to say that the president, as of now, I think, as I said before in one of my previous shows here, that the president is going to be himself, in the sense that this is the time that we are going to see President Uhuru Kenyatta in his true colors. And I said he's going to lose friends. But he has to do this because he has to also leave a legacy where he shall be judged by the Kenyans on what he did for this country. And this is the time that he's actually doing exactly that, to leave a legacy that Kenyans will say, oh yes, we remember Kibaki, but we also remember Uhuru Kenyatta for this and this.
For this and that. Exactly. All right, let me come to you, Honorable Sotsi. And when do you visualize Kenya getting to a point where we can change these faces, but Wanjiku is still taken care of? Unfortunately, it is a puzzle of, which personality is going to be there. But can we get to a point where it does not matter which faces appear there, but what matters is the fact that Kenyans are taken care of? And this would be where now we'd be talking about politics of agenda, politics of ideology.
Well, the problem, the major problem in this country is that we have been cultured to believe that whoever is in power benefits, his community benefits.
But isn't it you politicians who are pushing that culture? I mean, as I was listening to your statements earlier on, you were saying that we, the Luya, already that puts us in a position where it is no longer Kenyans, it is we, the Luyas, have been left out. So you're the people who are pushing that.
I'm coming to that point. We have been cultured that through our laws, through our political system. And that's why when we got a new constitution, and we thought that we will be able to deal with this issue, that has not addressed this issue. So we need, again, and I support those who are saying, maybe it's time to have a relook at our constitution so that we create, we remove this idea of winner takes it all. We create opportunities for all people, whether in the political system or in the governance system. One way is to go parliamentary system of governance, so that not all high-level decisions are made by the presidency.
Executive.
It should be shared out with the
but
three
then
arms
the
of
question,
government.
if that happens, the question might still be who is president and who is in charge of where, and it will still be down to communities.
Mike,
Vincent.
I think I hear my brother. Let me, because now we are talking about how do we get Wanjiku on the spot. So I hear his concerns about the challenges that have come with the current governance system. But the problem is not just about that. I think you alluded to it, the culture that we've built over time. And I would want to say that, Mike, there are already examples of things that actually answers your question in our current setup. And I will give you a specific example, the example of Makueni. Look at the leadership of the Honorable Professor
Kivutha Kibwana.
Kivutha Kibwana, where, as in, they have developed models of public participation that today are actually examples on how can be replicated elsewhere. They have addressed issues like healthcare, and you can feel even when you go to Makueni that there is a sense of rightness. People are feeling we have a governor. Our issues are at the center of this.
And what is it that they have done right?
And that's how I was explaining that before we now bring in the issue of constitution, or we need to amend the constitution, we are putting the scales in the wrong order. Let us ask, what is it that Makueni has done? It is the philosophy of servant leadership, where he's actually taken the agenda of the Mwananchi and put it at the center of development. And then it is now the people who are the custodians of that. They will tell you, sisi tunajua tuko na governor anaitwa professor. He works for us. Okay. Now, that if we bring that to the, because you've asking a pertinent question.
Just finish and I'll come to you.
If we can be able to then ask ourselves, how do we replicate these models? How comes it is working in Makueni? Another example is Western Kenya. The Oparanya, the leadership of Oparanya is the one that after Makueni, I would be able to bring it in that dimension. So I think one of these days we need to have those conversations. That how do we elevate and scale up that from those small counties, the examples that we have, and it becomes a national issue. Then now, if there are things that we need to insulate and principles based on the two at the constitutional level, then we insulate them rather than doing it the other way.
Okay, Brian Mutie.
At some point, I thought he was digressing, but at least he was able to...
He's come back.
He has come back. But it's okay. Thank you, Kimosop. I think the question of how do we, remove these faces and replace this with the new, fellas, I think is a hard question that we need to ask, to answer. And to me, I think... as you said, the Constitution bears some of the solutions that we need to, expurgate and bring on the table. One, when you look at the American system of governance, no one tells a presidential candidate who had lost previously not to vie this time round. Morality just dictates that. For example, if Al Gore, for example, had lost to one Bush, you will not see Al Gore coming again to campaign for a second time when he knows that he had already been rejected by the people in the first round. And therefore, those are some of the good practices that we need to borrow. They are not in the Constitution, but they are within the, the morality value system. And I want to tell you this. In Kenya, we are not yet there. And therefore, we can still bring out that kind of value system and get it through the support of the Constitution. How? As I said, we have seen these demigods warming our political space for so many years. In fact, some of us, when we were born, when we were youngsters, we were still, seeing the same names and seeing the same names of Musalia Mudavadi and Raila Odinga. How do we, ensure that we bring fresh blood in the value system in terms of leadership? One, because the morality and value system is not working, why can't we insert a clause in terms of constitutional review where we can actually bar these leaders from engaging or vying for political positions more than 2 times? Look at it. Let me say this. It's not dictatorship. It's democracy. If a leader is rejected or has vied for a presidential position more than 2 times, or 2 times for that matter, the Constitution should bar that person from warming the political space again. And that will give us a solution where we can have room or create room for emergent leaders such as Kimosop, who is raring to go, also see, and Brian, also Mike Jenga, so that they can also elevate themselves through the value system to come and also...
I'll shortly need your closing comments. Let me hear Mheshimiwa before I come to your closing comments.
I disagree with his view that we need to have those kind of limits. If we had those kind of limits, maybe we would not be where we are now. Because some of these politicians who've been there for long, they have contributed positively to this country. For example, Raila Odinga. If Raila Odinga was not there, we would not be having a new constitution.
Are we short of,
we are talking about people who bring the change. If you take an example of a country like Nigeria, Obasanjo did so well in his first term as a president in 70s. Then in 90s, he was brought back and he actually re-engineered Nigeria back to the international stage. politically and economically. So we may need some of this political leadership to be there over time. But what is important, as I said, is we have to relook at our constitution. For example, our constitution has a leadership and integrity chapter. We are seeing a pattern where leaders are being elected who don't have any integrity, who don't have any leadership. But because of lack of that value chain system in our political processes, you find these guys coming to power, and probably they'll be there for long, and this country will continue hurting. So those are some of the things we need to look at.
All right.
Otherwise, there is no problem in having a
we'll need to close short now, so
Mike,
I'll need
Mike,
your closing
no,
comments,
Mike,
your wrapping thoughts,
Mike,
Vincent.
I think before the closing comments, Mike,
Although
there's a discussion here about which is, I believe it is pertinent, because you invite us here to question certain things.
Yes, but
in
we have
society.
to work within a certain time frame.
And I think it is wrong for my brother to say that we need to have clauses. So the one who has responded, Brian, to say that we need to have. Yes, Brian, the one who was. We do not need to have clauses which are self-defeatist in the Constitution. Like, for example, barring people. Brian, I can tell you, Mike, if you're good in your job, what you're doing, what will happen? Every season, there will be freshness on your end. All you need to do is to be good in your job. I think the principle is not the longevity. It is the wrong elements and principles that some of the people, because they are not being able to exit the stage, they retain over time. So in my view is that now we need to have in the Constitution the principles and the right codes, not necessarily barring people. Like, for example, look at Makueni. A governor serves 2 terms. Now what happens to a place like Makueni that they have seen, hey, this guy may actually do another 3rd term. Now he's barred by the Constitution. So let's have a discussion on principles, not on personalities.
Okay.
That way we move ahead.
All right, Honorable Sotsi, your closing comments.
Well, the main topic of today has been the issue of political debt. I want to say it's backward and it's undemocratic for us to continue talking about who owes who what. I think what is important is for this country to focus on the main issues that affect us for now. Because the elections are 4 years to come. We have a serious issue of public debt where we have hit 5 trillion Kenyan shillings as a public debt. And we are wondering how are we going to be able to service these debt obligations. This is a real issue that we must think
and must be tackled
collectively as Kenyans. We have issues to do with corruption. We have issues to do with bad governance. These are real issues.
All right.
I would like us to come to this morning show and talk about real issues, as he has said, and not just about personalities and who gets what. I think that's the wrong way of doing things. We need to focus on the real agenda that affects our people, because politics is 4 years from now. And I will urge Deputy President, please go slow. Support your boss in delivering his legacy. And not politics day in, day out.
Brian, your closing comments very briefly in 30 seconds.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike. I think he has rightly put it. Let's disengage a little bit on the political gear and engage on, a development sort of pathway that we need to follow as a people. And I think the president, as you can see now, he has actually put his best foot forward to ensure that Kenya rectifies the anomalies that it is experiencing in terms of cost of livelihoods, in terms of job creation, Big Four agenda being pushed with a lot of energy. And this is a wake-up call for us to divert a little bit from the politics of the day and refocus our minds into how we can actually come up with the ideas on how we can support the president of the day and the administration to spur this country to economic heights. Once we do that, I think Kenyans will be smiling all the way to the banks. But when we talk about politics every day, now we are discussing about a subject which should not be having even a room in our today's newspapers. Politics of betrayals and handshakes, and what do you call it?
Debt.
And the debt should not be finding its place today. But we should be talking about how we have now gained after the handshake, what are the best ways on how to move this country forward, and how do we ensure that our youth are also benefiting from this handshake. And finally, the issue of emerging leaders. We have always been worshipping these demigods. I think it's the high time that we create room for young fellas who need also to climb the ladder and also show the world how they can also play with the big boys as far as leadership is concerned. France has a president who is 37 years old. He's doing wonders in France. Africa, Kenya can do the same.
We should copy the same. Thank you very much, gentlemen. That's Brian Mutie, governance expert. We have Vincent Kimoso, political analyst. And last but not least, Honorable Godfrey Otsotsi, who's a nominated member of parliament. And that's where we wrap up Political Point. And thank you also for participating. I can see some of your tweets were coming through, but I'll read them as we go along. For now, we want to take a short break, but do stay with us right here on Morning Express. We have more news and reviews coming up later on. We'll also be looking at your money. And remember, fuel prices have gone up. What advises the increase in fuel prices and how does that affect your pocket ultimately? So that's going to be a discussion that we've still lined up for you. For now, we take that break at 26 minutes to 8. Do stay with us.
This is KTN News.